Hey everyone, Jessica, clinical psychologist, coming to you from the sitecollective.com, and we are doing another schema mode video today. I'm going to do two today. I'm going to do one on the punitive parent and the next one's going to be on demanding parent. Okay, so origin, where does this come from? Here's the thing with the parent modes, right? From a schema therapy, like traditional point of view, they talk about it being a parent mode. But I want to be really, really clear, we're not blaming mum and dad necessarily for this. So when we talk about a parent mode and the origin of this, the idea that, look, have you ever met a 2-year-old? 2-year-olds love themselves. 2-year-olds think they're awesome. 2-year-olds see themselves at the center of the universe. So how do you go from a 2-year-old who thinks they're awesome to a 12-year-old who hates himself to a 22-year-old who's got depression? And the answer is exposure to kind of adverse experiences within their environment. So if you grow up in an environment where there has been a lot of criticism, a lot of negativity, a lot of judgment, a lot of put downs, or maybe it wasn't so much that there was the presence of the negativity, but perhaps it was more the absence of the positivity. And our brain kind of has a bit of a filter, a bit of a bias between we'll fill in the blanks and usually we fill it in negatively. Then what happens is, as a child, we hear negative kind of comments within our environment, or the way that we're treated could be a lot of harsh punishment or things like that. And so in the beginning, we're exposed to really negative stuff. And over time, we start to internalize those messages and we take them on ourselves. Now, when we talk about punitive parent, it's really looking at what messages did you receive from anyone who was in a position of authority over you when you were a child? So yeah, okay, it could be mum and dad, could be grandparents, could be aunties and uncles, but it could also be teachers or coaches or religious educators or scout leaders or whatever else, older siblings, kind of older peers and things like that. People who were critical of you. Now, all of us experience criticism at some point throughout our childhood. Everyone is criticized of, well, you didn't do that right, or you could have done that better, to the harsher thing of you're terrible, you're useless, no one loves you, no one wants you, right? So the kind of level of punitiveness, sometimes even the level of malevolence that you were exposed to as a child, is going to strongly influence the way that you kind of internalize your own punitive parent, such that for many people they get to the point where they become their own punitive parent. Okay, so by punitive, I mean punishing, I mean critical, I mean kind of that voice in your head that tells you you're crap and you're useless and you're worthless. So in terms of the function, I kind of grappled with this really, because honestly it doesn't have much of a function. But what does it do to us as opposed to what does it do for us? What it does to us is it criticizes us, it berates us, it puts us down. The punitive parent insults us. It reminds us of our failings and our flaws and our vulnerability. It's the voice in the back of your head that goes, you just screwed that up on camera. In terms of the triggers, it is either you're preempting failure or you're put in a position where you are, there's some element of performance, right? So it could be performance on a task, but it could even be kind of performance kind of within a relationship. So if you are fearful that you might be judged negatively by others, if you are in a relationship with someone and it could be the perception that other people don't feel the same way about you, the perception that things aren't going to plan. The punitive parent is the voice in the back of your head that says, that's your fault, you screwed that up. They don't want to hang out with you because you're useless or you're worthless or you're shit, and everyone realizes how shit you are and you should stop pretending because we all know it, so it's happening and just embrace it, right? It's the thing that drives the fear of abandonment because we believe that other people don't value us, so of course they're going to leave us. It's the thing that says, don't even bother trying because you're going to be useless at it, you're going to be terrible at it, you're going to fail at it. So the schemas are very closely associated with failure, defectiveness, punitiveness. Sometimes there can be a bit of kind of dependency and competence schema, usually an abandonment schema. And in terms of the awareness, to be honest, some people are actually more in tune and more aware of their inner critical punitive parent than they are of their vulnerable child, because this thing has a megaphone, right? This is the one that is the voices of, and now here's the thing, right? Sometimes it is, I am useless, worthless, crap, whatever. Other people hear it as, you are useless, you are worthless. And some people can can identify what was the source, or may hear it in the voice of the person that these ideas originally came from, all right? But it's very much kind of, you're useless, you're worthless. It's the physical, usually it can kind of manifest as almost this kind of shrinking, kind of shutting down, hiding sort of response. And to be honest, most of the time when you hear your punitive parent, that's when you're going to flip in to a maladaptive coping mode in response to the punitive parent for the way of trying to protect the vulnerable child, right? It's kind of like if you imagine you've got a bully in the playground who's targeting the small child, and another student kind of steps in to go, hey, you can't talk to him like that. That's the coping mode that steps in, okay? But if you're using a maladaptive coping mode, it's the function of trying to protect the vulnerable child. It just does it in unskillful ways. But the punitive parent is the bully, all right? It's shame and blame and guilt, and usually there's a lot of loneliness, and those sort of feelings are very much kind of internal. There's a lot of kind of you feel that one in your core. That one hits pretty deep. It's in terms of the behaviours, it's the self-criticism, but they can also manifest into some behaviours around punishment. Sometimes it's self-harm, sometimes it's emotional eating, sometimes it's restricting positive experiences. I don't deserve to be happy, I don't deserve to have fun, I'm not allowed to experience positive emotions. There can be a lot of restriction of the good stuff, as well as the presence of the bad stuff and the kind of criticism. The difficulties for this one, it fuels the shame and the guilt. It feeds the self-hatred. It denies the vulnerable child and basically says you're not important, no one cares about you, we don't care what you need, kind of what you want doesn't matter. It defeats self-confidence, it erodes self-esteem, it undermines our value. It is, I think Tara Brach refers to it as the trance of unworthiness, right? Is that thing in the back of your head that is constantly having a go at you. And then that starts to get a little bit projective in it, because it's like, oh, well, I think that I'm a terrible person, so I assume that everyone else can see this about me, so they probably also think that I'm a terrible person. So it can start to feed into a bit of mind reading, a bit of social anxiety. There might be a stretch to some projective identification where you think that they think about you what you actually think about them, and it just gets messy. And the idea that you think that you're crap, so you think that everyone else also thinks that you're crap. And this constant tirade that's going on about it. There's not a huge amount of crossover in this. The punitive parent itself is kind of really stands out as being the punitive parent. There's a little bit of the demanding parent, but I'm going to do that in the next video to explain what the differences are between the two. But in terms of the needs, if you've got the voice in the back of your head that's saying you're useless, you're worthless, you're lousy, no one wants you around, what you need is some validation of your actual worth. You need some acceptance. You need some limit setting on the punitive parent. So in terms of where the healthy adult mode steps in, the function of the healthy adult mode in response to the punitive parent, banish it. It has no value, right? Now, I've worked with plenty of people who say to me, oh, I need that punitive parent because that voice in the back of my head telling me that I'm terrible actually drives me to want to be better. Probably actually a bit more your demanding parent as opposed to your punitive parent, because your demanding parent is more focused on standard and rules and outcome and achievement, whereas your punitive parent is more just telling you how crap you are. So it really doesn't have a lot to offer. So in terms of managing the punitive parent, it's first of all making the choice to unhook from the punitive parent, which is incredibly hard to do if you have been listening to those voices for as long as you can remember, all right? So the key kind of intervention for how we actually manage this is a process called externalization, okay? So first of all, it starts with the awareness that these messages didn't start with you. You weren't born with these ideas. This didn't come from you. This came from outside messages. Maybe you can identify the specific person or the group of people, or maybe you can identify that there were certain things that you didn't get, so your brain kind of filled in the blank to kind of say, oh, well, you didn't get told I love you, therefore I don't love you, which isn't true, but it's kind of how we perceive it, particularly as children. So what we want you to focus on is, in terms of kind of strategies for this, and what we ask the healthy adult to do is to be able to externalize it in a way that says, I hear this voice and I know that it's not mine. I know that it's a collection of things that I've heard from previously, but I'm going to choose to recognize them as being external sources as opposed to what I truly believe for myself. So through this process of externalization, you can name your inner critic or your punitive parent, whatever you want to call it. For some people, they find it really, really helpful to draw it. Okay, so I have a friend of mine who calls her inner critic or punitive parent Cyrus the virus. I have other patients who refer to it as Trump, because then it's really easy to dismiss the things that he says. I have other people who refer to it as Karen. And if you don't know what I mean by Karen, it's an Australian reference at the moment that's happening with the COVID thing of people who want to speak to the manager and insisting on having their own rights met, but completely miss the point of what's actually happening and basically just start arguments for the sake of it. So once you've been able to kind of externalize it, you can hear that voice in the back of your head and you go, shut up, Karen, I'm not listening to you today. And have that ability to kind of be able to go, I hear that inner critic, I'm choosing not to engage with that inner critic, and I'm externalizing the inner critic. So a lot of it comes down to setting limits and boundaries. Okay, I want you to imagine that kind of if you are a parent and there was a bully who was talking to your child and saying horrible things to your child, what would you say to your child to then reassure them that the bully was full of crap? Don't listen to them, they're making stuff up, they're just picking on you because they don't like who they are themselves. Whatever it is that you would normally say to be able to kind of scoop up that child, that's what I want you to imagine that you're doing for your vulnerable child. Okay, so it's around setting limits, it's around being able to say kind of that's not really who I am, that's what I've been told to believe, that's what I've heard a lot of, but it doesn't necessarily come from me. And this takes practice. Okay, in terms of getting others on board on how to help you, get them to call you out when you're being critical. Like if you drop your pen and you mutter under your voice, oh, I'm such an idiot. If you've got friends or kind of partners or parents or whatever who are aware of the fact that you're trying to work on this, get them to call it out. Hey, don't speak to yourself like that. That's not appropriate. You didn't need to talk to yourself like that. Okay? Get them to be able to reinforce kind of what your positive qualities are. Sometimes there can be a huge amount of kind of courage in being able to say, hey, this thing just happened. My punitive parent is telling me blah, blah, blah. Can you help me out with this because I'm really stuck in my punitive parent, right? So it may be you find out that your friend had some other group of people over on a Saturday night and you weren't invited. And your punitive parent is like, they don't want you, they don't like you, you're terrible, you're really, really boring. So to be able to say to your friend, hey, I noticed that you had so-and-so over on Saturday night and I wasn't invited, kind of that voice in the back of my head is telling me it's because you don't like me and I'm really, really useless and worthless. Can you help me out on this? And they go, oh, sure. Well, I had these people over because we were doing this thing instead and it wouldn't fit with what you like to do or whatever. And sometimes you can get that alternative explanation to kind of quell the punitive parent, just shut it up and shut it down, okay? I think the biggest thing to remember with a punitive parent is it is nasty, but it's also been habitual if you've been listening to it for a long time. You've been living with it for a long time. The idea of being able to challenge it, reject it, get rid of it, hide it, first of all, there needs to be a choice for you to make of, are you willing to do the work to try and get rid of it? Question yourself to, why have you held on to it for so long? Is it out of habit? Is it because of what you believe? Is it because it's what you've been told to believe? What would be the benefit of you holding on to it? What would be the kind of benefit of you getting rid of it? A bit of a pros and cons analysis, right? This one is usually one of the hardest kind of schema modes to shift. And as much as we say banish it, in all reality, no one's going to get rid of it 100%. It might still be lingering around, but you want to be able to, when you hear it, be able to go, that's not what I'm listening to, that's not what I'm engaging with, okay? So the punitive parent, shut it down as much as you can. It's not actually helping you, even though it might feel like it's helpful because it feels like it's driving you or motivating you. It feels familiar. The idea of being nice to yourself probably feels really foreign. Try it anyway. What's the worst that could happen from getting rid of that voice in the back of your head that's telling you you're useless and you're crap? What's the worst that could happen if instead you adopted a healthy adult point of view where you were being self-compassionate and self-validating and self-accepting, okay? If you're struggling with this, and seek out some therapy assistance on being able to work through this, okay? I will get a handout up on this soon. Check our website, psychologist.com, and stay tuned for the next video for demanding parent mode. Okay, thanks guys.